Thank you, Danny. I never heard this part of the story, and I think every survivor story is a miracle. And I think every survivor
Several
story,
miracles.
several miracles, and I think every story is completely different and unbelievable. And no matter how many times you hear things, you hear new things. I was trying to put some of my papers together because I thought I would point out some pictures, but since Brian didn't want me to do any housekeeping here, I'm just going to show you one picture. I'm a little bit older than you are. Actually, I have two birthdays. The one that I was given after the war because my parents did not survive. My brothers, nobody in my family survived. I didn't know how old I was, and I didn't know exactly my name. So I had 6 different mothers during the whole period. And at the end of the war, I was given a name in Sweden, when the children from Bergen-Belsen were taken there. And then in 1989, I went back on a trip with Yad Vashem, and I found my real birthday. So I know now that I'm older than you, but I didn't always know it. Our ghetto in Poland started September 1st, 1939, when the war started. A month later, the first ghetto that was established was in Pietrzyków, which is the city that I lived in. I lived in a very nice house, which I have the picture of it. I've been back to the house, and there was even a mezuzah. A mezuzah is this, you don't know what it is, okay. When I went back to Poland, it was still there in 1989, and the woman remembered my father. I don't remember him. The story that I was going to tell you is the situation in the ghetto was very bad. People in surrounding areas weren't allowed to live outside of the ghetto, so they moved in. And then sometimes later, people in surrounding towns and villages weren't allowed to live there, so they had to move in. So no matter how nice your home in New Zealand or any place else, if you have 5 and 6 families in, it got very crowded. There wasn't enough food, there wasn't enough medicine, and typhus was rampant, and there wasn't enough heat. And Poland is a very cold country. But at the beginning, people were able to smuggle in, and if you had money, you were able to buy things. At one point, they took the able-bodied people, like my father, to slave labor factory. My father was taken to a glass factory, and there were 2 others in town. I remained in the house with my mother and my 2 brothers, David and Joseph, David and Yossi. As difficult as things were, one day the Germans decided people weren't dying fast enough, and they didn't want any Jews left. And they had the first rouse of the first action. And in the middle of the night until early in the morning, they came in banging down at the doorway, rouse, rouse, schnell, schnell, take whatever you need, you've got 10 minutes to get out and run down. And we had to run downstairs, which I have a picture of, because they're old stairs. And if somebody fell, other people fell on top of them, and there was chaos and there was crying, and you can imagine the kind of feeling that you're leaving your home. People didn't know what to take. Some people took pictures, some people took money, some people took food, some people took their babies or the old grandparents, and we were rushed through the streets. We were herded through the streets like a herd of animals, being whipped, until we got to the synagogue. It is now a library, but it was a synagogue at that time. And this is a picture of the Aron Kodesh, which is the Ark, with the Torah, the 5 books of Moses in a scroll I kept. And you can see that there are bullet holes in that wall of that thing. Now those bullet holes weren't just meant for the wall, they were meant for the people. And if it didn't reach the people, they got through the wall. Somehow or other, I got into this room with my mother and my 2 brothers. 2,000 people were gathered together from the ghetto. This is not what I remember, this is what I hear. But everything else that I'm telling you about, I do remember. Not everybody could get into that first room, so other people who couldn't get into the sanctuary were brought upstairs. And the people who couldn't get into the building were taken outside. They had to dig ditches. It was called the Rocco Forest, and there they were shot into those ditches, and they became their graves. I was in this room with my mother and my 2 brothers. There was yelling, there was screaming, people were holding on. By that time, I was almost 6. The ghetto started when I was 3 and a half. I am sure, as a little girl, I must have been holding on tightly to my mother, because it was a very scary, terrible situation. And I'm just as sure that my mother must have been holding on to me and to my brothers. I don't know how it was possible, but in the back of the synagogue there was a door. And on the other side of the door, there was a man. I believe he was my uncle, but I'm not sure. I've never found out, and I probably never ever will find out. Maybe he really was my biological uncle, or it was the polite way of addressing an older person. Instead of calling them by their first name, it was aunt, uncle. My name at that time was Fredja, or Fredel, which was the Yiddish name, and he beckoned to me and he said, run. I must have been very stupid, very naive. I never went to school, I never learned anything, but I knew to obey orders. I don't know how a little girl who's so scared is willing to leave her mother's hand. I don't know how my mother was willing to let me go. If you think of yourself as being mothers or fathers, this man told me to run. Maybe my mother pushed me, maybe God pushed me. I don't know how it happened, but I ran out. The soldiers could have easily shot me, could have bopped me over the head, could have pushed me back, could have, but they didn't. Maybe they figured, how far is this kid going to run? The next soldier shoot her. Maybe they didn't see me because it was so crowded and so many people were pushing and going and screaming. I don't understand how. I ran out of the door. That was the last time I saw my mother and my brothers and the rest of my family and neighbors. They were taken on those famous cattle cars. 80 to 100 people pushed into those cars, and they were taken to Treblinka. I can't imagine what my mother's last thoughts were. Was she worried about the two little boys she was taking to an unknown destination, or was she worried about the little girl whom she let go someplace, not knowing where? When they were taken to Treblinka, of course, they were taken to the gas chambers, and I don't have to describe that to you. And then they were buried on open pits, because at the beginning they didn't even have gas chambers. Later on, Auschwitz and Majdanek was built, but at the beginning there were open pits. They would put flammable liquid on them, and their bodies were just consumed that way. This man, what was he supposed to do with me? My father was working in a glass factory. He took me to my father. What was my father supposed to do with me? Little girls were worthless. Little boys, under the age of 10, children were useless. And if they were useless, then they didn't have the right to live. So my father did what he thought was the best thing to do. He changed my name from Fredja to Freum. He told me that I was 10 years old. He cut my hair. He gave me boys' clothing. I had to learn to speak. The grammar in Polish is gender, male and female. I had to speak like a boy. I had to act like a boy. And more correctly, I had to act like a man of 10. And I worked in the factory with the men. My job was delivering pails of water. I don't think the Germans cared about people being thirsty. But if you would faint because it's so hot there, then you wouldn't be doing their work. So our job was to delivering the water to them. More than anything I remember is that there were big German shepherd dogs. And anytime they wanted to show you who was in charge, they'd sick a dog on a group. Just imagine this group, a dog would pounce on somebody. If they could bite out of your hand, if you couldn't lift your hand, and if you couldn't work, that was the death sentence, because you were useless. And there were no antibiotics, there were no bandages. If you got infected, it was the death sentence. Those dogs, the fear of those dogs never leaves you. It's always there. We worked very hard. I can tell you many different instances, but I know that Ephraim is very careful about timing. One day, they decided they didn't want any Jews left in Poland. And someone, like you mentioned, Anne Frank, was sent from Auschwitz into Bergen-Belsen. And they started the death marches from camps and from the factories. So we were being censored. Again, we had to go to the plots and find those cattle cars, and everybody had to push everybody else onto it because we didn't even have ramps. And again, they filled the cattle cars to capacity with nothing to eat, nothing to drink, no place to go to the bathroom. And when you talk about the smell down in there, can you imagine one of these cattle cars, which are closed tightly, and 80 to 100 people there, and you can't, there's a pail. How long would one pail last for a group like this? The whole thing slopped over, and the smell never leaves you. These things, I don't remember dates, but smells and tastes and feelings like that never go through. Even if you don't eat, you have to go to the bathroom. After a very long period of time, people died, people fainted, people did whatever had to do. We crossed over from the Polish to the German border. The doors were flung open, and the rest of us had to jump out, no stairs, into the snow. We used the snow to eat it, we used the snow to drink it, we used the light to see who was still around and who was still alive. And I was with my father and the men, and I was one of the men. While we were getting used to the new site and looking around, Germans with bullhorns came riding on motorcycles with sidecars, and they made an announcement. Men on one side, women to the other, and we were taken to camp. And when we were being taken to camps, my father knew what's the first thing you have to do? You have to get undressed and take showers. I don't know if the Germans cared. I mean, we were smelly and filthy and probably had lice and things like that. I don't know if the Germans didn't want to be around such filth, or they had another reason. If somebody has a watch or a necklace or a ring, if you're dressed, you can hide it someplace. If you get undressed, you can't hide anything, and they could confiscate everything and give you an old rag or a uniform. My father realized that if I get undressed, what would happen? They would see I'm not one of the men. They would kill me, they would kill him, and anybody else who tried to help me. He met a school teacher that had come from a different camp. And when I say camp, factory, it's where people worked. I guess they were work camps, but they really were like factories. He met her, he gave me some pictures, and he said, look at the pictures of the mother and father and children, and we will find, war will end right away. And he promised to meet me after the war in our hometown of Petrograd. I went with my new mother. My new mother's school teacher, I don't remember what she looks like. I don't remember her name, but I also don't remember what my real mother looked like. I do remember her name. The men eventually went on to Buchenwald. The women eventually went on to Bergen-Belsen. I never saw my father again. He never had his promise. I had the pictures, but very quickly, just to tell you that when we got to Bergen-Belsen, they took everything away from us, including my pictures, which they tore and threw away, so I have no idea what anybody looked like. I was with a new mother, a lot of stories about that, but when she was taken away, somebody else took care of me. When she was away, 6 different people saved my life by just being my mother. Not that they sang to me or gave me a birthday cake for my birthday, but the fact that they were there. I was lucky enough to always have people. And at the end of the war, I had another mother, and I was taken to Sweden, and that's a different story.